My name is I am a registered counsellor. I've been in practice for 2 years and I'm a graduate of Cornerstone Institute. When I was a child growing up, I didn't specifically know what I wanted to do, but I've always known that it had to do with some kind of care, support work. I just realized that that's something that I'm called for and something that just came naturally for me growing up, so it made sense. I heard about Cornerstone from a friend of mine who actually went to Cornerstone Institute, and I decided to finally go for it and do it, so I enrolled. Funding was always a huge concern of mine. My family didn't have the means to support me, so when I finally heard about the bursaries available at Cornerstone, I applied for it and here we are. If it wasn't for the bursary, I definitely fear I would not have been able to be afforded the opportunity to be educated, to be trained. So I guess without this bursary, you could say I would not have been able to fulfill my childhood dreams. I would definitely advise prospective students to not give up on their dreams, to send their applications for bursary because it is available there, and to not give up. Thank you, Cornerstone.
You want to further yourself, your career, and have more options in your life. We get it. In order to do this, you need to increase your level of earning. But in order to do that, most of the time, you need to further your education. However, in order to further your education, you need to pay for it. But in order to pay for it, you need to further your education.
However, in order to further your education, you need to pay for it. But in order to pay for it, you need to further your education. However, in order to further your education, you need to pay for it. But in order to pay for it, you need to further your education.
But this cycle can be broken. At Cornerstone, we don't believe that finances should be a barrier to quality education. Speak to one of our advisors today and email info@cornerstone.ac.za now.
Good evening and welcome to Cornerstone's Critical Dialogue for the month of June, where we are commemorating Youth Month. Before we move on to tonight's Critical Dialogue, there's something exciting that I want to bring your attention to, and it is that we are running a live draw that's going to take place here. I would like to inform you that the People's Weather, channel 180 on DSTV, have been flighting Cornerstone's TV ad for the past 3 months. Cornerstone and the People's Weather share a common set of values and vision. They are concerned with people and with nature. We are working together to make the world a better place. Education is the intersection, and creating access to higher education is a shared passion. So what happened is that we recently ran a competition on the People's Weather channel and received more than 100 entries. The competition was based on the TV ad, and viewers were asked to answer questions. The winner of the competition will be announced tonight. So let us take a moment to watch the TV ad as seen on the People's Weather channel.
There's one thing you can be certain of: your education. Our wide range of online programs let you upskill yourself and earn a leading-edge qualification from the comfort of your own home. We've been educating Africa for 50 years, so we know how to adapt to our forever-changing landscape. Learn to change the world and take control today. Speak to one of our student advisors. Visit cornerstone.ac.za to enroll now.
Thank you for that. So now it gives me great pleasure to introduce Sandra Amadio of the People's Weather channel to conduct the live draw. Good luck to all the entrants, and over to you, Sandra.
Thanks, Bulelani. Great stuff. So here we go with the competition draw. I'm going to do it on random number generator on Google. And I got number 49. Okay, so firstly, I'm just going to cross-check if the questions are correct. There are 3 questions. How many years has Cornerstone Institute been educating Africa for? Correct answer is 50 years. What is Cornerstone Institute's slogan? Learn to change the world. Also correct. And what date do applications close? Third answer, also correct. That's 8th of June. And our winner this evening is Salma M. Shikongo. Congratulations to you. You win 1,000 Rand.
Thank you very much to Sandra, and congratulations to our winner. Thank you, Sandra, for conducting the draw for us. Now we're going to hand over to Shakira Dramat to proceed with tonight's critical dialogue. Over to you, Shakira.
Hi, Bulelani. Hi, Sandra, and good evening to all the viewers. Thank you so much for that introduction, and congratulations to the winner of the cash prize. My name is Shakira Dramat, and I am the Critical Dialogue Coordinator at Cornerstone. This evening, I will be introducing your facilitator, whose name is Jason Maguda. He will then take over from me and proceed with the discussion. Jason, as a young man from Bishop Lavis, started working with youth as early as 1998. He started out doing this through holiday programs at the Bishop Lavis Library. In partnership with Friends of the Library and various organizations, the services of the venture developed through doing volunteer-based community projects, a passion of Jason's to this day. He was exposed to the NGO sector by Frank Julie in 1999 and started an NPO in 2000. The NPO was called CJM Arts Project, and in late 2002, the name was then changed to the Bishop Lavis Arts and Culture Kids Development Forum. This venture collaborated with individuals who had similar social development interests. Jason is also the founder of JDM and Associates, Pty Ltd, and community development practitioners, where he hosts SMME training for upcoming entrepreneurs and community organizations that have a strong focus on the NGO sector. And we were just chatting backstage where Jason also mentioned that he works with those in the nonprofit and NGO sector to help them find ways to generate income for the organizations, which I think is really great, because without resources, you can't make a difference in the world. He recently became a board member of the People's First Foundation and is also a member of Food Relief Alliance South Africa. And of course, Jason is also the vice president of the SRC at Cornerstone, and he's also the academics affairs officer. So without further ado, I'd like to bring Jason on screen and introduce him. Hi, Jason.
Hi, Shakira. Thank you for that very powerful introduction.
I will hand over to you.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is a great opportunity that we have tonight to be hosting this critical dialogue, which is very, very, very important. And it's been a very tough year for us in terms of where we find ourselves in terms of the forward movement, in terms of our youth. We are celebrating Youth Month, and the discussion for our critical dialogue tonight is very selective in terms of how young people see economic development or the economic recovery in terms of our forward movement. So just to set a platform or a landscape in terms of where we find ourselves in terms of the economy in terms of South Africa, and specifically how it affected youth within the past 10 to 15, 20 years. So we can look at the current unemployment rate that has been escalated to about 4% since we checked it last. And just this afternoon when I double checked, it has escalated with another 4%. So our youth are in a situation whereby they are totally cut down from the situation where they cannot find employment. So the efforts from the private sector, the efforts from the non-profit sector, and the efforts from the government the institutions has not really made a dent in terms of the vast situation that we find ourselves in terms of unemployment in South Africa. And so tonight we just want to look at the depth of that situation. So there's a global debate currently running that says that more and more youth are being pushed into a space of unemployment, and it is affecting the economy in such a way that you would find youth not finding employment. So what I would like to just hint to you is that we find ourselves with a stagnant economy, because people that has got money don't want to spend because they are not sure of the future. And then you've got people that they don't have money to spend. So we are sitting with a severe situation where we find people that just are cut off from moving forward in terms of the economies. So tonight we want to look at various views from various young people that have looked at the situation that we find ourselves in all of the Western Cape and also South Africa. They have done some amazing work. So we want to look at the vast scope of unemployment. So can you just stay tuned, because I'm going to introduce to you our panelists for tonight, three very powerful panelists that have done amazing work. So the first panelist that I want to introduce to you is Nkanyezi Sikakani. She's undergrad UWC and co-founder of We Are Social. She's only 21 years old, Black female from Johannesburg, and currently living in the Western Cape. This human being has registered. She is registered as a BCom undergrad in the University of Western Cape. She's a presenter on Good Hope FM. She's a neo-liberalist feminist, and she's contributed tremendously to the social sector in terms of the organization that she have. She aims to empower social and creative entrepreneurs in the Western Cape. She has been involved with organizations such as Siyaya Youth for 5 years, and I mean the list just goes on. She has represented South Africa in 2017 on behalf of the DTS through the SASTA department, and has represented the Gauteng province in multiple science, finance, and public speaking tournaments. what an amazing speaker, panelist tonight, that we want to give an opportunity to just share the work that she's been doing. Good evening,
And thank you so much, Jason, for that awesome welcome. You know, it takes some time to actually recognize the things that you've done in your life, because when you are doing them, the only thing that matters is the passion that you're doing it with and the reason that you're doing these things. So I'd like to say good evening to each and every single person who's tuned in tonight. Thank you, Jason and Shakira, for inviting me to this awesome panel. There are so many things that we can talk about, especially when we're talking about the South African economy. And in spite of what many may believe, I think it's a truly great time to be alive. I'm so happy to be conversing with my fellow change makers about things that really matter to us as young people on a platform that speaks to us. I also think I'm really fortunate to be born in a time in South Africa where our economy is on the brink of collapse. We are trillions of rands in public debt. We have rising youth unemployment, and our political institutions don't necessarily serve or adequately represent us as young people. We are also simultaneously in a time where we are witnessing the rise of young people awakening to themselves. They are realizing their creative genius and they understand their power to move the markets even through a single tweet. I believe that in the peak of my youth, I'm amazed by the fact that the titles of CEO, business founder, and business owner are becoming my vernacular. And I think that there are quite a few recommendations that we can use to take control of our economy and to take control of our continent, our beautiful African continent.
Thank you so much for that powerful contribution that you've just made. And I agree with what you are saying. So I want to move to our next panelist by introducing our panelist. And this is Mwabazi Mazana. She is currently a master's candidate at UCT, founder of Hey Black Viola. She's a multidisciplinary creative and spends a lot of time exploring academia. What is very significant, a research focus on the intersections of social media and activism against gender-based violence in South Africa has been just amazing. So I'm going to hand over immediately to her to just share the work that she's been doing in that space.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Jason, for that introduction. Thank you so much for that. I'm really grateful to be part of a panel with such amazing people that have done such amazing things at such, a young age, especially in like being so young in your early 20s and doing so much. It really puts a spanner into that whole belief that the youth is not active and people aren't interested in kind of taking the country forward. So that's really something to be grateful for. So I'm quite interested in how the conversation is going to go and how you're going to steer us here, Jason. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you very much, Mobiza. Thank you very much for that contribution. I want to introduce our third panelist, Sebastian Daniels. Well, this guy is a winning entrepreneur. He's the founder of Ground Culture, and he's just been doing amazing things. Sebastian is investing in terms of culture e-com store, and he's a coffee shop in Observatory. He is a founder of Coffee Shop Blues and a winner of the Young South African Entrepreneur of the Year award. This human being has been involved and is very passionate about sustainable difference. He's been very, very involved in terms of informal economy of South Africa, and has spent the past 3 years just researching and working in the local informal economy. So I want to hand over immediately to Sebastian Daniels.
Well, how's it, everyone? And thanks for having me on this panel. Super stoked to chat about the future of South Africa, because us as youth, we are the future, and we are all born free, which is incredibly exciting to be surrounded by people that didn't experience what people went through in the past. And I think what I'm quite excited to talk about in this discussion is more around kind of The recovery of the economy is more around the reconstruction of the economy, because the kind of economy that we live in is the way it's currently constructed. It's not the way it's going to work forward. It can't work that way. It's still based on a system of apartheid and a system of division. And I think it's up to the youth, up to us who have grown up in a born-free society, undivided, and it's incredibly exciting that we get the opportunity to define the future of South Africa. And so I'm super stoked to chat with you awesome panelists about what we think the future of South Africa is going to look like, and the kind of economy that we want to build and create and develop, so everyone benefits from it, not just the few that did in the past and that are still benefiting from it today. So super excited to join this discussion. Thank you very much, Sebastian, Daniels. Ladies and gentlemen, before we move on to our critical dialogue conversation, we have a surprise tonight. Mr. Faiz Jacobs, which we will give an opportunity to just tell us a little bit more about himself, and then we take it from there. Thank you.
Greetings, Jason and the panelists. I'm really honored to be part of this team. My name is Faiz Jacobs. I'm a member of Parliament. I serve the Greater Athlone area, and my portfolio is the work for small business. And I'm very encouraged to talk about inclusive economy, especially for young people and women, and previously disadvantaged communities in the townships, rurals, and that. So, thank you for having me.
Thank you very much, Mr. Faiz Jacobs. I think for us to move forward in terms of the conversation, I would like us to consider the following: the current landscape, and all of you have introduced yourself and the work that you've been doing in terms of the economic state, etc. Brilliant work that has been done. I want to pose the question to you guys: what do you think? What is the effect? What is the landscape? How is the landscape affected youth in terms of where we found ourselves in terms of the economy? And I think let's do this maybe in a random order, whereby we will give each panelist at least 2 minutes just to share on that specific question, and then we take it from there. So we will start with Kanisha, if you can, and then we just follow this conversation.
So I definitely need you to repeat your question. I think I want to answer it as specifically as possible.
Okay.
If you can just say it again, please.
Okay, so what the question is, the current economic landscape and its effect on young people. What is your views regarding that? What do you think? How is the landscape affected youth? We know the situation is unemployment, etc., etc. But what are the other issues that has really impacted youth to this extent that we find ourselves in, and with the unemployment that is? What are the other factors that you are aware of in terms of that?
I think it's a very interesting question that you pose. I think, the way that our economy and our financial markets are structured are specifically structured in a way that keeps certain levels or certain types of demographics out. I think, our South African economy is constructed in such a way that at any particular point in time, the types of goalposts that are placed for young people to be able to penetrate the labor market, to be able to succeed in young business, constantly keep on changing. I'll make an example by including, public institutions and our higher learning systems in South Africa. 5 years ago, about 6-7 years ago, we were told as young people, you know what, you need to go to school, you need to get your degree, and then you'll definitely be guaranteed a job. The reality is 5 years later, we've got master's students, honors students living in unemployment. They are highly qualified. They do have experience. But because the structure of our economy is always adapting to what the globe is doing, and we aren't adequately keeping our pace up with what they are demanding from us, we end up having a large amount of the population being left out, and we end up having youth unemployment in our country. I also think the fact that our politics does not adequately represent our young people is one of the reasons that our economy is currently stifled. I think that there is a lot of legacy systems in our economy that keep people away from enacting change and being innovative and allowing their innovations to actively restructure the economy. And of course, us as young business owners are all obligated to really play our part to participate in these critical dialogues and make sure that
Yes.
our ideas are represented in these conversations.
Thank you so much for that overview of your views regarding that. And it's so true that what you are saying is that we find ourselves with a very, very, very big situation that we have to tackle. And I think as we engage more and more in this type of conversation, we can make these institutions aware of what we need to do in terms of bringing change in terms of where we find ourselves. So I'm going to ask Mabisa to just share our thoughts on that, and based on her experience and the work that the research that she's been doing, I believe that scientific proof is very important in moving forward. As a student, I've come to learn that now, that there's so many things that we have to draw from, and we need experts to just open up the scope so that we can understand what is happening. So over to you, Mabisa.
Thank you so much, Jason. What Ganyezi also just spoke about is actually really important, about the fact that the goalposts keep moving. But I think another important thing is that while the goalposts keep moving, the disparities keep widening. Inequality keeps being the main factor that is like that bridge between like the here and the future. And I think what has made itself very evident in the past few months and year is that with the move towards kind of development and how we want our future to look, what often happens with this type of work is that there's certain people that are being left behind because of the disparities that are widening, such as like the digital divide. South Africa's current like internet penetration is only at 64%. And I think it's quite easy when we speak at a grander scheme of being like, we're going to move towards this digital life where everyone is online and everyone is doing work online and, attending school. But when you look at South Africa and how it looks, you start then nitpicking the fact that so much of the youth is getting left behind. Kids are in primary school where some of them haven't even received like textbooks. There's kids in high school that haven't attended classes like all term because of that digital divide that keeps on widening, And I think where we find ourselves, the landscape is that from this current present to the future, the scales are not the same. And the scales keep on deepening in that there's people that are genuinely being left behind and there's people who are steering forward. And I think in order for it to be an effort where everyone finds themselves being on the other side of development, or we find ourselves as youth where we believe that as South Africa we've moved forward, it has to be the thing that someone who is
Yes.
even finding themselves at like a village, for example, or a Kunu or a Krakwa or wherever you come from, you're able to say that I'm also a part of that.
Okay.
And that youth is also a 16-year-old from there is also able to say that I'm also a part of that and I don't get left behind. So I think for me, the current landscape just speaks to that the
Thank you.
goalposts are shifting and there's just inequality that's just
Yeah.
widening.
Thank you so much, Mabisa. I know you are very loaded in terms of, and the passion, I can see the passion is there to speak more about this. But there's one specific thing that I really agree with is that the backlog in terms of access and breaking down the barrier to give youth access to. And that has been the scope of the work that I've been doing and even the organizations that I'm a part of. We have been focusing on breaking down the barrier, because sometimes youth don't have access to the information. They might know of a program, but they want to enroll in. They might want to be part of some initiative, but the access to that information. And I've seen in the lockdown, there's been just a strain on youth, specifically students from universities, etc., etc. It's not all of them, but there have been a vast majority of students that has been left behind in terms of not having access, in terms of most probably data, devices, etc., etc. Not everyone is fortunate, but I think there's a big gap in terms of that, and I do agree with that. So what I want to do now is I want to ask Sebastian to respond first, and then I'm going to ask Mr. Faiz Jacobs to respond because he's also very knowledgeable about what is going to happen in terms of our movement forward. So I maybe just want to include on the issues, the rising issues. If Sebastian, your field of expertise, informal versus formal sector, if you maybe just want to throw in that there and give us some insights and what your feelings are, your focus are in terms of this.
Cool. Well, I mean, I very much mirror the sentiments of Enke and Wabisa in the fact that we live in a deeply divided society. I mean, there's no getting around that. We live in a place not only in terms of privilege, but in terms of access, in terms of networks, in terms of funding, in terms of just the list goes on and on and on. I mean, I grew up in very much a white society, white privileged society, where 90% of my friends were white, and that was normal. And that was the norm. And I was told that's fine, go to university, get a job. And that's kind of what I'd say like 40% of us did, going to school. And that was normal. And only kind of when I got to university, I started getting involved in the informal economy. And that's where I kind of fell in love with South Africa, because I started feeling these kind of Ubuntu that we speak of. And we talk, this is the African way, but I never really felt it at school. But Ubuntu exists in Africa, but it exists in the informal economy. But the rest of South Africa doesn't know that. The formal sector has no Ubuntu. And I feel like the entire structure of the economy, the financial sector, the educational sector, is all built to feed educational academics or people with expertise straight into the formal sector, where people just stay in the formal sector, and we are not changing the way we do things. I don't think things are vastly different from the way they were in apartheid. I think it's obviously just a more equal society in the fact that everyone can vote and everyone has the same written down rules. But I think in practice, it's not all the same. And as youth, we really need to start striving to change things, not just striving to get jobs and going into into the formal sector, and forget that what we fought for in university, we see fees must fall, we see roads must fall, all these university things, but then people can't get jobs, and nothing actually changes. And we feel great at university, we feel entitled, we feel like this is where we're moving, and we're not making strides in progress. And what we really need to see is building bridges between the informal sector and the formal sector. When I did my finance thesis at UCT, I was the only one to do informal finance. Everyone else did formal finance. And I was like, what is going on? We're not striving to change South Africa, to include the informal sector, which employs like majority of the jobs in South Africa are informal. They're not measured, they're not scaled. We don't even look at them. Government's trying to pull the informal sector into the formal sector. When the informal sector is the most efficient, one of the most efficient systems in South Africa. If you want to get a loan, you go to your stock farm. Very efficient way of getting a loan. It is expensive, but you get a loan. If you want to get anywhere in South Africa, the most efficient way is to take a taxi in the formal economy. If you want to, if you want to meet a bunch of people, you go to the informal economy. If you want to go booze, anyway, the list goes on and on and on.
Thank you so much.
Of pulling people, of linking the formal sector to the informal sector, and do things in an African way, because that is what the informal economy does.
Thank you. Thank you, Sebastian. Thank you very much for that input there. We're going to open the discussion now in just a moment. Then we can just dialogue and see what we can get out of these views that has been put forward. But just before we do that, I'm going to ask Mr. Faiz Jacobs to just give his insights in terms of what has been being discussed at this present time.
Thank you, Jason. And let me say I resonate with all these speakers. The points that made about the goal shift posting, the digital divide, and the importance of the informal economy. I think it's very important. I'd like to, if I may, just share some of the programs that government is doing for young people. So the government has set up a 2021 Youth Entrepreneurial Program. It is a startup support program. So one of the objectives is to have about 5,000 youth-owned businesses start up And there is a program called the Township and Rural Entrepreneur Program, or TREP, TREP. And this is a program dedicated to provide support for townships, rural, youth, and women enterprises that's owned by these designated groups to develop access to the economy and also to look at opportunities. I agree that we need more people, young people, to say, let's create jobs instead of waiting for jobs. And small business and informal sector does provide that. The TRIP program talks about the spaza shops, general shops, auto repairs, mechanics, bakery, confectionery, clothing, textile, butchers, manufacturing. So those are some of the projects that you can access funding for. All the information. I did a recent Daily Voice article, which is all on there. I think the problem is we need to take these opportunities. There is a lot of opportunities, and the mismatch between waiting for, I would argue, the opportunities and also the knowing where to go. I think the big challenge, a lot of young people are saying no, they don't know where the information, and in first, secondly, they don't know how to apply for these things, because if you want to start a young youth business, you actually need to be registered. You need to have a business plan. It's not just about getting the money, whether it's 10,000 or 100,000 loan or grant from government. You actually need to be well organized. You need to know what you're selling. You need to know how you're going to be sustainable. You need to know how you're going to be able to pay the money back. So I think there's a lot of projects and programs. I think what we need to do is just to ensure, and that's my role, to ensure that access is given to young people. They know where to go. And if there's bottlenecks in the system, we need to unlock that. So I share it with Shakira, the context. It's on CEDA, CIFA, and there's some web pages also with all the information. So let me pause there. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Faiz. I think that is very valuable information. And I do agree that the barrier is that the information is not getting down to the ground in terms of youth, where youth supposed to be accessing these opportunities. And like I've hinted, is that the work that we do is we want to break down the barrier. And so it is very important that we have that information available and create a relationship between what is called the formal sector, like Sebastian has hinted to, but there is a reality of the criteria by which some of these programs sometimes disqualifies youth still in the process of not having access to that. Because I have been working with CEDA, I have been working with a few organizations, and the criteria sometimes where you have to fill in a lot of information, the paperwork is so much, and now there's this digital age thing that has come in. People have to now do stuff online, and it's just new problems are being created. So I think I'll just put that there, and then there's the issue of business plans, because when you go to the one institution, specifically government, you go to the one institution, you have to have a business plan that speaks to their criteria. Then you go to another, and recently I found that there is an attempt made by the government to assist by having a broad-based digital business plan. But the difficulty now is that how do we break the barrier down so that we can get more of this information down to the ground? And maybe I just want to pose this question to you. What do you think? What can we do in terms of that, in getting the information, and maybe use the next 4 or 5 minutes just to speak into that? And maybe I should just ask that we just quickly wrap this thing up in terms of what do we think? What have you done in your work to get the information down, and what has contributed to your successes in terms of getting the youth to actually get involved? And just before that, Sebastian, I do agree with you, the need for the engagement with the formal and the informal. I believe in informal learning. Not necessarily believe in it, but I believe that there's a lot of value in it, and there's linkages that we need to find, and by means of bringing those things together so that they can be a synergy in terms of getting results, and so that there can be an effect in terms of the economy, because the current economy as we know it is stagnant, because they are the general view of what is said to be, this is the way that we should go, and then there is the other that says, no, this is the way to go. How do we bring these things together? So can we maybe just open up the conversation and say, listen here, these are the things that we think we need to do in terms of getting the information down, because that is clearly a barrier in terms of giving the youth access to all these wonderful opportunities that are given by the institutions that has been spoken about. So can I ask if any one of you can maybe just give an insight in terms of that?
I'll just go ahead and kind of just want to talk a bit more, like we talk about business plans, and I think this is a big blockage I find in the system, is that a business plan is not always relevant anymore in the formal sense of writing like a 10-page business plan. Like I've written them and they've changed in a month, completely, because the landscape that we live in. And I think when we talk about entrepreneurship and creating jobs, like we're always trying to create the new great big thing that's going to change the world. But what we actually need to focus on is looking at spaza shops and very basic business that needs just a little bit of extra capital to develop, to get electricity, to upgrade the lights, to get an iPad, to have a financial track record. And that's really where I would focus on terms of applications for these things. Is often it's very difficult to be like, oh, here's my financials, because there is no financial track record. But something like a Yoko device, along with a Yoko point of sale, you start building a track record, and you're actually running the kind of point of sale. And and once you're running a point of sale, you know which the businesses are. So we need to start mapping out small businesses in the townships, in rural areas, in the formal sector as well, and then pushing SMSs out to them, pushing very simple ways of doing it. We do not need to reinvent the wheel completely, but we do need to start building community of entrepreneurs, to start identifying key areas where entrepreneurs are building, to understand what are the businesses exactly that the informal sector is operating. Right now we know it's trade. If you read in research papers, it just says trade, and it says 50% of people are involved in trade. But we need to kind of understand more, and we can use simple WhatsApp bots. We can use SMSs. We don't need to create fancy things. Most mobile providers give free WhatsApp these days anyway. So that's a great channel to focus on, is WhatsApp, SMS, just pushing access out there, saying, this is where you can go apply. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. I think there's so much information around entrepreneurial development, and we really need to focus on that. And I think it's a great way to develop the economy, but it's actually just getting the information out there and saying, there's a youth event at this community hall, come have a thing, bring your tablet and show us your financial track record, maybe we can help you in it. So I think it's small steps, and I think it's not reinventing the wheel, but using our current resources to push stuff out there, and using mobile as like a big major key piece of reaching people, and kind of moving away from computers, because they are expensive, they do get stolen, there's a lot of barriers there. But on a mobile, even if it's just an SMS, it's a great way to focus.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sebastian. I do agree 100%, because in my experience, when I was starting out working with community organizations and moving from the phase of working with the community workers, the directors of community organizations that are struggling, I realized that there's a gap in the market in terms of helping people to be compliant. The issue of compliancy, having the tax clearance certificate, etc., BE certificate, all those different things in terms of supply chain, registering with supply chain management, etc. But what I've come to find out, just by the basic thing, I mean, you mentioned by simplifying things. I've had just recently a conversation with the ladies. I mean, she's making profit 3,000 to 4,000 rand profit, informal business profit for the week, 16,000 rand profit, and there's a track record that says that she is doing that. So that has been amazing. But the way I've interacted with her was, I said, listen here, you don't need to come to me. You don't need to speak to me personally. Let's just meet on WhatsApp. And we had a 10-15 minute conversation. Our company was registered in 2 to 3 days, and now she sorted out. And I think that is a very valuable point, that we need to begin to simplify um, uh, these type of trades, because consultancy fees is very high for people that are working in the informal settlements. I mean, when I started out, um, I tried to run with the high flyers in terms of costing, etc. But then I dropped until I ended up with 550 rand per hour. I realized that it's not working, because the intention is to help the person on the ground. So having that person in Joburg talking to me on WhatsApp is sparing that person to have 3,000-4,000 rand flight accommodation just to come and speak for 50 minutes, has done so much for that person. So I think that has been using social media as a very important contribution. So I'm going to ask the next person to panelists to add to the conversation.
Thank you, Jason. I definitely want to echo what Sebastian has said about, really meeting these entrepreneurs where they are. What we find when it comes to these funding opportunities that are available for micro enterprises and small enterprises is the fact that, in a sense, this information is highly monopolized and it's highly inaccessible to the people that it actually needs to get to. I'll give you one example. So you'll have an advert for 100,000 Rand in funding and mentorship support to all students who are working in township areas. But when it comes down to it, that link or that advert, that post doesn't actually get to that phone, or it doesn't get to that tablet, or it doesn't get to that person. And I think that the way that we could potentially, decrease this issue is by centralizing the business systems that exist in each community. We know that we've got 10 business owners in Khayelitsha. Let's create a system where we have a network of all of these guys interacting with each other, communicating with each other, and have someone reach their ideas to them or reach the funding opportunities to them. This is something that doesn't happen. We have a very big disconnect between all of our business owners within the country, within the informal spaces and the formal spaces. And the best way that we can do that is by taking advantage of creating a network between these people. I think the next thing that we need to do to improve this issue is the fact that we really need to be specific about the type of entrepreneurs that we're looking for. There's a lot of things that happen, and there is a lot of opportunity that exists for people to register their business, to become a business owner, a CEO. But then you find that the business that you've registered is highly disconnected or mismatched from what the economy is looking for. So we would find big funding opportunities for these tech companies, for these fintech apps, but we find that majority of the population at grassroots level is not innovating ideas like that, is not creating those types of businesses, and so they don't get those funding opportunities. Being specific about what these funders are looking for and how it's going to help the economy is something that will really, improve the lifespan of these micro enterprises and these small enterprises as well.
Mm,
I would like, yes, obviously, I would like you to give your thoughts on these issues.
I think what Nkanyezi and Sebastian has spoken about is very important, about like getting very involved with people on the grassroots level. And one thing that I've realized is that, especially with things that have to do with development and funding and anything that has to do with that type of stuff, is that we often take a very top-down approach where people feel very spoken to, and you get there and you tell them that this is what we're going to do, or this is what's happening, or even when funding is being offered or any type of help, right? And what happens is often that feels in a sense of being very undermined, because people would like to participate in things that feel as if they're going to grow them. So, like Nanyezi said, being able to build like a central program that says all entrepreneurs in that vicinity or in that radius coming together, even if they have to even pitch ideas and being like, this is what we'd like to see move forward, especially for our communities. I think that's a very important part of moving forward, even when it has to do outside of things that have to do with funding. In order for the informal sector to also grow in itself, it has to be a thing where it stops being them being spoken to, where people come and tell them that we know what works for you. Because the informal sector in South Africa has been above water for so many years, where whether it's Stockfelds, it's taxis, it's spaza shops, because they know what they're doing. They're
Yes.
able to have a very functioning system because they do know. So one thing that often happens with those type of things, especially when you think of the informal center, people think of them knowing more and being like, I'm going to get there and tell them that this is what's going to work for them. But I think in order to move forward, especially as a country, is when we sit down and we have discussions and we let people that literally run these informal sectors and make turnovers of over 1 million tell us that this is how it's going to work and this is how we'd love to see it grow. And I think that's another issue that often happens with things that have to do with funding or even any type of support, that it also exists in these type of barriers that say that if you cross the line, funding is not going to happen for you. And I think that often steers people also away from that, because you tell me that I need to do this, or I need to give ownership to this, or I need to, all these long contracts that speak to bigger things that you can't imagine happening for you. So I think, for me, the biggest thing is that development has to be participatory for it to be able to be long term and sustainable.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mwabazi. I think the contribution has been very, very good, and I'm hearing the sentiments in terms of entrepreneurship and development, etc. But I'm also hearing um, there are other issues that we have to focus on in terms of, so if entrepreneurship is um, an answer to economic recovery, what would be the other factors that can relate to economic recovery? Because if we're gonna say entrepreneurship, you know, then we're gonna be stuck on one path. But that has been the buzzword for about 15 to 20 years: entrepreneurship, technology and innovation, etc., etc. What are the other factors that you think can be also contributing to the recovery in terms of the economy?
Um,
You
if
can go ahead,
are
Bobby.
you, can I go first? Oh,
Yes,
I'm
you go
not
ahead,
sure
Mr.
because
Bobby, and then we'll have Mr. Faiz Jacobs to go.
I think outside of entrepreneurship, because what often happens is we also kind of use it as a kind of wand of being like, just be an entrepreneur, just be an entrepreneur. But I think there's so many other socioeconomic factors that exist in South Africa that it would be a lie for us to say everyone can be an entrepreneur and we keep it moving, because that won't happen. And I think at the basis of it is the issue of the fact that there's so many disparities that exist, whether it's gender inequality or economic inequality, social inequality. And in order for us to move forward, we need to deal with things that include things like gender based violence, that include things like the digital divide, that include like those small things that we often think of them as nothing. But these are things that establish a type of economy and country that is able to sustain itself and able to eradicate itself out of poverty, because then the whole country is then involved and everyone's voice is heard. Where marginalized voices are given the space to be able to say that this is how we see it moving forward. But I think outside of entrepreneurship is that there needs to be a move towards a chat of this is how sustainability is going to look, whether we're even talking about things that have to do with the environment. It needs to be a very intersectional approach from every type of party involved and no one's voice being left behind. So I genuinely think that's the only way that South Africa is going to see itself moving forward.
Thank you very much, Mabisa. I want to pose the question to Mr. Faiz Jacobs, and just put a little bit of a turn on there. Um, the role of higher education institutions in the economic development space. Um, can we get an insight in terms of government's role versus the private sector roles, and are they doing enough, or what are the key um, keys to what they're doing and not what they're not doing?
Thank you, Jason. Now, I think there's a lot of richness in the debate, and I agree with Noma Bise and Kani said about the issues raised. Um, the first thing, I think entrepreneurial work must be pushed, but it can't be the only solution. I agree with that. I think more should be done to share the information and platforms. So I've asked Zakira just to put up all the websites, all the contact details, and on that. So I just want to add on that. What should we do more to create an inclusive and shared economy? We have a very prosperous economic growth, but the problem is that we have high concentrations in the formal economy, and it doesn't trickle down. So we don't have an inclusive shared growth. There's not economic inclusion in the process. So what you have a big disparity, and I think Mabisi has raised it, that inequality, structural violence is there. I think what we need to do is a comprehensive package, and we need to we need to increase the social wage. So we need to have a basic net. So the basic income grant is a key thing. Look, everybody won't be able to get employment. We need to grow the economy. We need to have that economy shared by its people. We need to deal with the historic imbalances of the economy that's skewed towards mainly white males and doesn't look at the previously disadvantaged communities. I think for me, the key thing there is so the basic income grant is a key thing. But we also have a very skewed economy in that more than 17 million South Africans are on the welfare system. It's on the social welfare system, and tax is being paid by only 5 million people. So that is unsustainable. So it's clearly we need to. There is the public works programs with government. There is also the minimum wage that government is trying to set up to ensure that we get decent wage, because that's also the problem. You have a capitalist arrangement that is super exploitative, that doesn't really want to pay living wage to our people. And because people are desperate for jobs, there's also competition. So foreign nationals are prepared on the farms to work for 70 rand, but the basic minimum is 20 rand an hour. So I think there's also those competitions that we need to deal with. You know, if people ask me, should we give free fees for tertiary education, or should we give free education for early childhood development? Where should the focus be? It can't be either or. It must be and a lot of people are saying, yes, we're putting a lot of money into a tertiary education, but our basic primary education is not sorted out. So I think we need to look at how do we prioritize even learning at a young age. And I think learning is an important component, but learning is not going to take away from the structural problems that we have in our economy. We have a highly monopolized economy that works for few. There's four banks that control everything, so they determine price collusion. There's the bread guys. They put up the price for bread, so they determine collusion, and that's why we need to push back. And big business must be forced. So in the ShopRites, Pick and Pay, Checkers, we need to ensure that local business get on the shelf. So the hair products mustn't just be of Theresa May. It must be of a African woman or someone that's from our area. It must have local content in the shop. So I think that is a key thing. Now, the role of the private sector. I want to answer the last question. The role of the private sector. Look, obviously, we need the generosity of the rich and the patience of the poor. And I think that for us is a very difficult thing because, you know, we have a very big unequal society, but we need to find a win-win situation. We need to grow the private sector. We need to get more business going. People need to make profit, but that profit must also be able to cascade down. So we need a contractual in where the private sector, the public sector, and our communities must be contracted into almost a people's contract where we create a win-win situation. The private sector must do more. And I'm not talking only about increasing the taxes. I'm actually talking about being an effective corporate citizen that put people, profit, and planet and the environment ahead of just only profits. And so the partnership must be there around the private sector must be able to do more for our young people. The interns that we have, we've got a massive incentive for companies now to take interns in, but that mustn't be translated into slave wages, for example. Because what happens now, we paying graduates in an intern, 3,000 rand, 4,000. It can't be. That's not a sustainable salary. So we're asking our companies to also come to the party, so to speak. Yes, how can young people get experience if they don't get opportunity? So it's a catch-22 situation. So the interns must be not a substitute for cheap labor, but it must provide that necessary platform for growth. So let me pause there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jacobs. Kanisha, you can go ahead with your input.
Thank you, Jason, and I really agree with some of the points that Mr. Faiz Jacob has spoken about. I think just to add to the topic of higher learning institutions in our country, I think the type of unemployment that our country is experiencing is essentially what we call structural unemployment, and it essentially is an indication that there is a high level of disparity or distinction between what the labor market is looking for versus what the educated labor force can provide. And I think, when it comes to higher education in our country, I think the government carries the responsibility to start restructuring and revitalizing some of its course and its curriculum so that it speaks to some of the things that you're going to start doing in the working world. I mean, I am currently chairing an investment society, and one of the big aims of our society is work readiness, because we find that we're going through our course, we pass our exams, we do everything. When we get to the working world, we find that our recruiters are complaining about the fact that we can't do some of the things that they expect us to do by the time we graduate. And that exists because we have a lot of ancient teachings. We have a lot of old and unrevitalized systems in the way that we're teaching students. The pedagogy is old. It doesn't speak to African needs and African wants and the things that young Africans are thinking about. And I think once the government starts taking that into consideration, once they start structuring a curriculum that really teaches young people what to do, how to do it, and how it speaks to the demands of the labor market, I think there'll be less unemployment in that sense.
Thank you so much, Kanesi. I'm going to ask Sebastian to just give his input on this question.
Yeah, I think the private sector does well in South Africa. I think it's a brilliant sector. It doesn't feed the people, but that's not necessarily what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to make profits. And we're not going to change the way that's structured. It's its own beast. It's something that's going to continue. It's a monopoly, and it's not necessarily we can beg and we can plead, but it's going to do its own thing. And I think the role of government, we've got this sentiment in South Africa where we think government's going to solve all the problems. We keep saying government's not doing this, government's not doing that. And I think it's overcomplicated government's job in a sense. I mean, it definitely is letting us down, but I think we need to return to the basics where government is providing us with structural architecture that's going to grow the country. They should be lining fiber lines all over the country. We should be getting internet to far and wide. That's going to generate economic growth. That's going to allow people to access the internet online, to access education, to access a whole range of services. Our postal service is nowhere near where it used to be. We can't even send things to each other. The formal sector, we're not going to change the way the formal sector and the private sector develops the country, but government needs to start recognizing the informal economy, and it needs to start leaning into formalizing the informal economy in an informal way, not necessarily changing it completely. And I think in terms of we need to build new universities, new things, we need to let government universities set their own curriculums. That's not something for government to do necessarily. That's for the university level to do. And it's just, I think we keep wanting government to change, but there are people doing amazing things. And we need to get behind these people and support the people. And I think youth is feeling a bit unheard at the moment. We scream and we cry and we protest, and that's the only way we feel heard. And at the end of the day, our sentiment's not actually getting through. We're basically saying we need to educate more people. And as a youth, we can focus on changing curriculum for university students, but that's still a fraction of the youth in this country. And that's youth unemployment is affecting majorly the people that don't even get the opportunity to go to university, don't even get the opportunity to go to matric. that's where the problem is, and we need to focus on developing that and growing those people into a way that they can access the internet, that they can access roads, that they can access all kinds of things that lead to further development, not necessarily focusing on just the minor development. We need to improve structural efficiency of the economy that other layers can then grow on it, because South Africans and people, we problem solve. We're trying to solve people's problems, when people solve their own problems. But we need to give them the structural architecture to be able to do that and to be able to grow and change. And no, I can't put a fiber optic line on the ground, but government can do that. Government can afford to do that. And that's the kind of thing we need to be talking about, is government needs to simplify its things, its operations, and let people build on top of it, because that's what people are doing in the informal economy without any influence of government.
Thank you so much for that valuable contribution. I want to thank you for each of that input. I just want to ask Mabisa if you maybe have any final comment on this question, maybe just final insights on this specific question. So you can go ahead, Mabisa.
Thank you, Jason. I also genuinely would like to just feed on what everyone has said. I think the points have struck on what really matters, especially on issues that have to do with what is being taught in universities. And I think it would also be very, I don't want to say dishonest, but it would also be very unlikely for us to not speak about the fact that it's not easy, obviously, to take on the task as people, as us, when we're together like this and more people, to turn over a whole country by ourselves, because, efforts. But what I'd like to say is it's also important that we consistently, in the work that we do, also see the importance of holding account to government, because power cannot then be seen as a thing where you're like, we're going to look aside and be like, okay, you do the bare minimum and then we'll do the rest. Because that's sadly not how a democracy works. And it's sadly also not how structures work. Because for structural inequality to be uprooted, all structures need to be taken into account. For structural socioeconomic issues to be uprooted, all structures need to be held into account. So I think the biggest thing for me, especially when it comes to things that have to do with institutions of higher education, is that it becomes harder when we now say, okay, we face it towards institutions and we say, for example, the University of the Western Cape, you guys change your curriculum. Because what happens is that because they have the means, they're able to, but institutions that don't have the funding can't. And they then stay with that archaic type of teaching, and they stay teaching, let's say, an LLB course where they've been using the same structure for so many years because they don't have the means to. So I think it's very important that when we uproot the type of structure and we ask for change, that we make sure that we head for it straight and are able to hold all accounts of power, and we're able to hold all people accountable and be like, okay, what is the Department of Basic Education doing? What is the Department of Higher Education doing? Because what happens is that even the same thing that happened last year, where when lockdown happened, the University of Cape Town went straight to online, while the University of Fort Hare had to wait for months before they could even be able to afford to. So then what I'm trying to say is that if we're able to then uproot and talk about things of higher education or any type of inequality, it would be very dishonest of us also to then look aside and say that, okay, everyone then must then play their role, but the government will then not, or they can do whatever they can, because then it creates a very bigger inequality amongst everything. So I think for me, that's the biggest thing, that if we'd like to move forward, I think it's a very honest task with all of us, especially as thought leaders and change makers, to consistently be able to say that in the work that we do, it's honest work and it matters, but it's also important to hold government accountable and ask, what are you guys doing? That's in the same way that Faiz is here today, and we're able to ask, what is the work that you're doing? Because that work also matters, and it has a far wider reach than we will ever have.
Thank you so much for that valuable contribution. I just want to check quickly Yes, I'm gonna ask that we move on to our next question as we are moving to the finalization or the conclusion of our critical dialogue. I mean, there's so much that still can be unpacked, but let's let's just keep it um, as the next opportunity will arise. The next question I would like to pose to you is, um, as the panelist, as the panelist, why did you decide to be active youth? Um, what are the contributing factors um, in terms of moving the country forward, and what drove them to take this action? So, in other words, why did you decide to get involved in terms of youth as in when you started out with your programs? And then I also want to ask, with that said, can we also just cover what do you think, what is the future focus, what can be done, what should be done if more can be done? um, and I would like us to do a random sharing, and maybe just get each one maybe just 1 minute to share on that question. If I'm sure the question is clear. Thank you.
Me? Okay, cool. So yeah, my motivation is around, I grew up with two parents as journalists, and it kind of gave me a different view of the economy and around the issues in South Africa. But I was also very entrepreneurial, and I grew up kind of very inspired by Steve Biko, and I think he's incredibly relevant today. And while his whole philosophy was around Black consciousness movements, and it was incredibly powerful and overturning apartheid. We need to have a similar sentiment now, in the fact that we need to, as youth, as South Africa, as born frees, we need to unite together and connect networks, whether that's informal and formal, or privileged and unprivileged. What we need to do is work with passionate people in South Africa that want to make a difference, and connect them with the kind of people that have the resources, the networks, and the access to actually create that difference. Because those are two totally different people. I'll give you a quick example. I work in Khayelitsha with quite a few entrepreneurs. One of them, Abusi Honey, a 52-year-old beekeeper who was selling 25 kilograms of honey a month. I started working with him and plugged him into 75 coffee shops that I was distributing random products to. And over the course of 8 months, we took him from 25 kilograms a month to 250 kilograms a month. We 10 times that business because we had a product that was based in Khayelitsha with an amazing, powerful story and a great entrepreneur behind that. And I had the access, the networks, and the understanding of what kind of the privileged and the formal sector wants from a product. So I took that, my understanding of that, and we took his drive, his ambition, and we changed the product slightly, and we plugged it into that network, and we 10 times the business. Now that can be repeated with multiple businesses. We've sold over 2,000 township-based products over the course of, 11,000 township-based products over the course of lockdown, and we have continued to grow because the sentiment in the formal sector, people want to support, people want to do the right thing, but it's very difficult to do. How do you go and just support without just giving to an NGO, which is also a great way of supporting, but it kind of doesn't, you're not getting anything for it, and you're not really feeling the difference and the change. We need to reward people in a way that makes them feel good for supporting the economy, and we need to develop businesses and entrepreneurs in Khayelitsha and give them a whole new access. So that's kind of the future where I see is connected economies, is building that bridge that actually develops both sides and rewards both sides. And I see South Africa as an incredibly powerful nation moving forward if we can connect those two economies.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sebastian. I just want to just quickly read a input from one of our viewers. Well said, Sebastian. Government has to simplify their methods and strategy. That is from Irene Fitzy. Yeah, thank you. And then we've got Marsdorp Cannon. A profit-driven economy is not interested in the development of natural resource, be it human or land. It's inherent, exploitive, and destructive. Thank you so much for that one. Southgate Assembly, I think one major problem is the way government postures itself, in that they set themselves up as the owners of the resource of the country rather the stewards of the resource. Thereby, they determine who is worthy to get funding and who is not. So South Africa and its resource belongs to all that live there. So my question is, the government a corporation that do business with the citizens, or is the government for the people that serves its people and do its best to be non-racist or non? That's a question. Can you please respond, Mr. Faiz, to that question?
Yes, no, I think the speakers are quite correct. Our government should be stewards, and me, I'm a servant leader. I must lead by providing services to our people. I must listen, and we need a caring and responsive governance. So we need a caring City of Cape Town, we need a caring Western Cape provincial government, and we need a caring national government. Because we vote for them, but we need to have a participatory democracy. A participatory democracy is where the citizenry are active and keep people accountable. As Nwabisi said, we must keep us accountable. We must talk about the issues. So where do I come from? What is how did I get involved? And how do I see the future? I think for me, I've been an activist since 14 years old. I was a student activist in the late 80s in Mitchell's Plain. I resisted apartheid. I was a political detainee. I was 14 years old when I was at the Victivist Day in 1989, and I've been an activist ever since, priding myself on working with our community, priding myself. So as a youth activist, I always see myself as youthful. I might be a bit older now, but the issues of the young people are close to my heart. I think we need to have that goodwill. I think we need to push harder. I'm also asking our young people to remain hopeful. You know, there's so much bad things happening there, but I think what we need to hold on is our resilience, our ability to strive, our ability to make things work. We are crazy, beautiful South Africa. There's a lot of things going for us, but I think we must remain hopeful and we must be able to pull together as South Africans. So that's my hope of inspiration, my hope of a good message to young people. Take your opportunities. Don't sell yourself as a second-class citizen. You're not black enough or you're not white enough. Just go for it. You are South African. There's all these opportunities. We fought for your freedom, and yes, we've made mistakes. There's a lot of mistakes that we've made as our generation, but it's your turn now. It's your turn to take the baton, to fight the fight, and also to ensure that we leave a legacy for our youth. So I am here. I am a resource, and you guys know where to find me. I'm quite keen to build relationships with each of you individually. I think it's amazing that we have some young people, talented like yourselves, in your different paths that give privilege. I mean, Sebastian, the fact that you are using your privilege to help others to make things happen is commendable. And that is the South African responsibility that we must be proud of.
Yeah.
We might not agree
Thank
on
you.
all things. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Faiz. I do value that contribution. I would like to ask Kanisha to just share why you decided to be active and and explore a little bit on the work that the work that you do.
So I think, there are so many reasons that I've decided to become, to become an active citizen in my country. I'm very passionate about Africans and South Africans. I am very passionate about young creatives. And I think one of the ways that we can recover our economy is by firmly developing an African identity, being very clear about who we are and controlling our narrative. And I'm one of the people, in the creative spaces. I've been fortunate enough to do broadcasting. I am fortunate enough to get into multiple speaking and art arrangements. I am in advertising. I'm the girl. And the company that I founded with my partner CJ Mula is called We Are Social. And one of the things that we do is that we take control, or we take control of the opportunities that are provided to young creatives. We believe that it's really important for us to start monetizing our work as young creatives and taking control and really shaping the creative economy in South Africa. There are tons of filmmakers. There are tons of actors and actresses. There are tons of artists, dancers. I think creativity is something that is inherent in the African gene. And I think we would be very silly if we didn't take control of this, if we didn't formalize this and make it an economy and allow our young, expressive people to make money off of things that come naturally to them. And this is what we do in our company. We incubate these young artists. We take them from their first album or for their first art collection. We connect them with investors that are interested in this. We connect them with recording artists, people in their spaces, so that they can take control of their work, so that they can put their work out there, and so that the identity as a collective is clear. So that when we are representing ourselves in global stages, we know that we're not trying to imitate Americans or Brazilians. We know who we are, and we can be very proud of who we are. And that's exactly what we do. And that's exactly why I've decided to become an active citizen.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I would like immediately to ask Moabisa also to respond to that question. Just share regarding the work that you do, and why did you get actively involved with the work and the things that you are doing?
So just a brief history is that I'm from Pretoria, one of the biggest townships in Pretoria. I grew up there and I still live there. And I think the biggest thing for me that kind of implored me forward to kind of be very involved in anything that has to do with any type of youth development, even when I used to work with the South African Institute of International Affairs, is that there needs to be a space that, like I said earlier, that allows for people that are very marginalized to speak for themselves. That is also very participatory, especially in the type of democracy that we have, that in whatever development and in whatever way we're moving forward, we need every type of voice involved. And I realized from where I live that often what happens that people come in and tell us what's going to happen to the places that we live in, and it's never a thing of what would you guys like to see happen, especially as the youth. So that's vastly the type of work that I'm very interested in. And even with the master that I'm currently pursuing now, I'm very interested in even issues that have to do with gender-based violence, and how spaces like social media allow people that often do not have a voice be able to speak. I'm also very much into the creative space and work that has to do with that, and spaces of digital work, and bringing awareness to issues that are often silenced and often do not have the space, or that are not talked about enough. So that's the type of work that I work with, and my interests lie in that. But thank you so much for all of you that have been here, and the type of insights that you've all shared. It's really been really insightful. Thank you.
Okay, what we want to do now is, thank you so much, Mabisa. I want to ask Mr. Faiz Jacobs to just share some resources, if possible, maybe websites, Western Cape Access, where people in Western Cape can access these opportunities that you have spoken about. Anything that you can share with us in terms of that.
Okay, thanks. I did an article for the Daily Voice the other day, focus on young people. I'm prepared to share that website, but essentially, there's many opportunities for young people. So there's a department called Department for Small Business and Development. They've got a nice Facebook page, and they've also got a good website. So a lot of these things are digitized now, and a lot of the applications is online. As young people, you fill in those forms, and we've learned since last year. We've actually tried to make it as simple as possible. So the Facebook page, Department of Small Business Development, is the one. Then CIFA, South African Enterprise for Finance Agency. They provide loan facility for township entrepreneurial cheese and yamas, hair, costume, bakery, all these small informal. So again, there's all of those is on the CIFA website, and then they provide grants and funding, and a lot of the money is either for young people as grants or as 2 or 3 below prime loans. But again, it's for established businesses or even new emerging businesses coming up. And again, that's the CIFA website. And then CEDA is also providing a lot of non-financial support, how to fill in a business plan, how to access mentorship, marketing support for that. And then there's what we call a Black Industrialist program. So if we want to go big and look at that is being funded by the Department of Trade and Industry. Again, there's a big youth focus there of saying if you want to go into particular fields and have good ideas and go into the industrial sector, we are prepared to help. There is also a lot of private sector funding agencies. The Black Umbrellas, for example, it's the foundation that the president in his previous capacity as a business entrepreneur was doing, but he's no longer involved there. But that Black Umbrellas is still doing really great work. There is the Harambee Youth Accelerator program that government has, which also provides work-ready learning opportunities for young people. So I think I'm prepared to share again my details, and I'll put up through Cornerstone's infrastructure, share information. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We are rounding off our critical dialogue. So I'm just going to quickly ask each panelist just to share their website details. And I want to ask Nkanisa to do that, to just share your website details with the viewers, so that they can have access to those details.
So you can find, I've always wanted to say this, so I'm going to take the opportunity to say it. You can Google me. Google me. Anyway, on a serious note, you can find some of the work that we've done in our company, particularly on Instagram. It's called We Are Social _. You'll find all of the events that we've done on that page. You can also find one of our partners, it's called Snake Nation. They also work with Creative Rebels at www.snakenation.io.com. And you can also check out the Black Umbrellas as well. Check out their website and look for Snake Nation and We Are Social, because we are working with them as well. It's always a pleasure to engage with young and interesting people. And I want to say a very big thank you to Cornerstone for inviting me to have this discussion with you.
Thank you so much. Can I ask Mobisa Mazana to please just share your website details and so forth?
I can't say Google me, but luckily I have a Instagram. So Hey Black Viola is where my work lives under, and where I usually write. That's where everyone can find me, or heyblackviola.wordpress.com. That's usually where I am, and that's the type of work that I'm invested in currently. But yeah, thank you so much again for having me.
Thank you so much.
It was a really interesting and insightful panel. And I can't wait to see all the amazing work that these young minds do.
Thank you. Sebastian, do we have any form of communication tool that people can get hold of you if they want to know more about what you are doing, etc.?
Yeah, so please obviously check us out on Instagram, groundculture_. Check us out on our website, groundculture.co.za. Really kind of a lot of products that you can purchase, all the township-based products that we talk about, you can buy there. Just a correction as well. We didn't sell 12,000 township-based products. We sold 12,000 plastic-free products in a year, and we sold 4,000 township-based products over the course of COVID, which we launched a month afterwards. And then what I'd really appeal to is we have a coffee shop that we've just opened in Observatory on Lower Main Road, 170 Lower Main Road. And really welcome anyone to come and have discussions with us, really talk about this. Let's not finish the conversation here. Let's further the discussions between youth. Coffee shops have always been a place of conversation, caffeinated conversation. Let's get excited. Let's talk about the future. Let's not stop the conversation. Let's continue things. And let's have events. NK, come bring your artists, please. We've got a stage, and we would love to get passionate and a lot of pride around South Africa, because it all starts with music.
We'll have asking for coffee on the house, just for me.
You get your first one free, and then you get your next. I'm joking.
Thank you, Sebastian. I'm definitely coming to have that coffee. I'm definitely coming very soon. Mr. Faiz Jacobs, Sebastian Daniels, Ms. Kanisa Sikakani, Mwabiza Mazana. On behalf of Cornerstone Institute, we want to thank you for being involved in this critical dialogue. It is a very critical conversation that we had. I personally am going back to this conversation, and then I'm going to be working through these conversations in my own personal time. And I just want to share, if you want to get hold of me, JDM and Associates. Facebook is my platform of operations, JDM and Associates. Bishop Lavis Arts and Culture Kids Development Forum, People's First Foundation. You can find me. I'm working with young people at work. You can just check there. You will see all the work that we're doing there. And then finally, I will just want to thank the viewers for viewing tonight. I want to thank everybody that has contributed by sending through the notes. Ms. Kim Kluter, she said great panel. She just Joseph Thomas from Bishop Lavis, very impressive. Thank you all. And so there you have it. Thank you so much to all of you. It's been an amazing conversation. And I hope to meet all of you in person very soon, because I need to get your signatures before you get famous. Thank you so much.